All right, looks like we're going. Welcome back to another one of these things. We're just kind of talking about whatever comes to mind. Hope you're having a wonderful Thursday. I swear, sometimes that gap is intentional. Like, before I'm talking about something, when I do, the little intro thing, and then the hope you're having a great day. But, that time it felt like I just couldn't remember if today was Thursday or not. Don't know if that's just me. Don't know if it feels like Thursday or not. I know Heather was just saying she thought it felt like Tuesday for some reason, but maybe it's just one of those days. Anyway, things to chat about. Chat about? I don't know, but that doesn't start with T, it starts with CH. Anyways, things to kind of talk about today. So one of the things that I mentioned here before, that I play in a percussion ensemble, community percussion ensemble at a community college nearby. I have a bit of a background in music. When I was growing up, I was really into band, and picked up clarinet as my first instrument. And as I grew up, started playing more percussion instruments, and even toward the end of my high school days, I was picking up some other wind instruments. I had picked up saxophone, trumpet, and played a few gigs on both of those, so that was kind of neat. And I was trying flute for a little bit, but I can't do flute for some reason. I can't do the I'm just not good at blowing air over bottle caps type thing. I'm very inconsistent at it. Regardless, and through college was majored in percussion and had to pick up piano along the way as a part of being a composition major. But it's these little moments that I get just sort of playing music with a community of people. That get me kind of thinking about some things. So I went through what was probably considered a traditional or trained, what people might say a classically trained musician, where you go through learning about the history of music with a big asterisk. When you are a classically trained musician, what you're learning, the history you're learning, is European music. And it's interesting being a part of a percussion ensemble after that. And just learning percussion as an instrument in general, because we get exposed to a lot of other cultures' music as a result of that. Just drums are found everywhere. And as a percussionist, we're not it's not just you learn this one instrument, as you learn basically every instrument that ever existed. It's basically saying that you are not a saxophonist, you are a wind performer, and you master every wind instrument. That's the equivalent. So when we have different drums from different cultures and different parts of the world, as a percussionist, people just assume that you know how to do that, which is a little different than if you're a saxophonist and then they give you a flute and they're like, hey, can you cover? Can you play this? It's that's not my instrument. It's well, the percussionist guy is playing every single thing under the sun, apparently. But beyond the point, or sort of beyond that point, percussionists also get, as a result of sort of being immersed in that culture, and we have to learn all these instruments from different parts of the world, we also get exposed to different types of music, just inherently as a part of picking up those instruments. A lot of these instruments were intended to be played with certain types of music. You're not going to find bata drums written for an orchestra, for instance. You might see that sort of go together over time, just as we're a more global community, but that's not where they originated from. That's not the setting for that instrument. And in those settings, we get different ways of interpreting music or reading music. We're going to do a little bit of theory here. So in classical European music, even today, the pop music that has come out of that whole trajectory, we like thinking of things in groups of two. You can call them duple meters. They're just ways to measure lengths of time and space in intervals of 2. So when we're playing music in this type of setting, you'll often hear people going like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then it repeats. And we break up not only that full set into that even divisible by 2 number, always divisible by 2, we also split those individual beats. So like in that example I did where I just said 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, that is one measure of 4 beats. But you'll notice that I also split those beats into 2 equal parts. So instead of going 1, 2, 3, 4, I say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That effectively splits the beat, or each beat, into 2 equal parts. And that's very pervasive in a lot of European music, or historical classical European music, as you would hear from like an orchestra, or if you think of things like Beethoven and Mozart and things like that. You're going to find a lot of that. It's not the only way to think of splitting up music. So if we think of things like, if we think of beats like pie charts, you can split them up into like any number of pieces you want. We do tend to gravitate toward that even number splitting. But that doesn't mean an odd one isn't possible. We have these concepts of compound time signatures, which they usually do, well, I shouldn't say they usually do. You can have any number of beats in a measure that you would like, but how you split that beat becomes more important. In these compound meters, you'll often find that the beat isn't divided, well, it's not divided into 2, just by definition of being a compound meter. We generally split them into 3. So instead of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, we split it up as 1 ola, 2 ola, 3 ola, 4 ola. Or how people might say that, like if you thought of it like as a triplets, if you sort of grew up learning that in band, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. Instead of saying, like if I do this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 ola, 2 ola, 3 ola, 4 ola, the beat never changes as we're going through here. But when asked to count in that triplet time signature, people tend to get a little bit confused. Or it's just naturally harder for us as musicians who don't have anything outside of like, I learned music in grade school, or I learned music in high school. And even when people learn music in college, it takes a lot of going out there to find literature, repertoire, music that incorporates those compound time signatures in ways that aren't just novel ways of expressing classical European music. Usually when those meters are found in that setting, that kind of music, they're treated as almost novel or exotic. You're trying to make it seem or sound or feel like it's a rare, a different, a major juxtaposition, a jump from the norm is probably the best way to put that. Is that this 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, or 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, that is the norm. And this 1 ola, 2 ola, 3 ola, 4 ola is different. It feels different. It feels not normal. That is not the case for basically anywhere else in the world. That 3 pattern is probably about as common as you could get, as long as you're not looking at Europe or America, the United States, and what came out of learning and inheriting that European classical music sense. And it's so weird, like, as we were talking, this just came up in a conversation where one of the members of the group was struggling with a 12/8 time signature. 12/8 is basically what we've been talking about. So if we do, like, a 4/4 time signature, where we have 4 beats in a measure, and we're splitting up into that duple, that groups of 2, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and what we're counting there is a 4/4 bar. And 12/8 would mean that there are 12 eighth notes in the bar. What that still means is that there are 4 beats, because we're splitting that beat into 3 sections. So, and those sections are eighth notes. So you have 3 eighth notes per beat. 3 times 4 is 12. So 12/8 is 4/4, but you're splitting the beat into 3 parts. This is almost a default way of thinking about how to split up musical time in Afro-Cuban and Brazilian music. It's just been there. And if you get into more like traditionally Middle Eastern types of music, you'll get into even more odd time signatures where you're doing like even odder things. That's where you'll end up seeing things like 7/8 come up a lot, where you're not splitting things up into an even 4. You end up going 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. Things like Fire Dance from Riverdance are set up like that, which is just a more mainstream example. But you get into those interesting spaces where you're not thinking about it in that traditionally European, classically trained way. But just because they treated it as exotic doesn't mean that the rest of the world wasn't doing it already. It's one of the nice things about being a percussionist in that sense. You get to experience more of those ways of thinking about how music can be expressed or divided, and like count them in interesting ways. Like some of the more interesting patterns that we have today, like clave, those can fit into your more classically trained European history type music, and they do, and they fit okay. But the origin of that type of pattern comes from Brazilian and Afro-Cuban music. And that even comes back from a pattern called 12 bell, where it fits into that 12/8 bar. So if we split that up, 1 2 3 2 2 3 3 2 3 4 2 do 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 do. Clave is an interpretation of that too, and you can spin that all over the place. You get these very interesting driving rhythms that aren't as common or aren't as strong in that duple meter that we kind of grew up learning. And it is a little sad that we don't spend a lot of time learning about those kinds of time signatures, or how to play music from those cultures that we've inherited so much of our driving rhythmic musical ideas from. That when you're approached with that, when you're approached with reading that music for one of the first times, it's like, wow, this is difficult. But it's not because it's rare. It's because of what we choose to teach. More stuff to throw on the pile of, we really know how like the white Caucasian person and their culture moved across history, but we kind of don't learn a lot about, like, at least from like a United States perspective, likely from a European perspective, that like just that immense amount of culture. It's so weird that it even just permeates how we learn music, and being approached with those things that are very common in other places and honestly very cool, and we get so much inspiration from them, but we don't really know how to approach them when we see them. They're hard for us to read or do because we're not introduced to it at an early age. It's not a part of our culture. So yeah, I'm not really sure what the whole thing I wanted to get across there was, except like, go out there, like if you're a musician, even if you're not a percussionist, if you're learning music, like reach out and just branch out and learn more about cultures from around the world. One, you'll be so much better, well-versed at being able to play all sorts of different kinds of music. You'll be like, you'll be hitting with being approached with just a bunch of different time signatures and weird ways to count things, and you'll be like, yeah, I get that. Like, that's a very common pattern somewhere. Things that are hard for us, like just learning classically trained musician type things, they're not actually rare or exotic, and even not particularly difficult. You just need the right mindset and understand the culture and the patterns that they came from. So definitely go out there and think about things like that. Explore that stuff and immerse yourself in it, especially as a percussionist. I cannot stress enough as a percussionist that you go out there and do that, because you will find that music all over the place and you'll be expected to play it like it's nobody's business to. And it's always good to get a jump start on that. Like, these things I didn't even start really knowing about until I got to like my late freshman, sophomore year of college. And that's really late in life to learn about these awesome musical cultures from around the world. There's really no reason not to go explore it, because music's great. It's amazing. Anyway, I think we'll call it that today. Hope you're having a wonderful Thursday and continue having a wonderful Friday. And we'll catch you in the next one. See ya.